on a Navajo Indian reservation doing physical therapy with children there. And so she moved, the kids moved out to this Indian reservation for a semester. So we did it by phone. That was before we had Zoom. So I've always done some virtual evaluations, but last year I did 90% of my evaluations virtually, as I'm sure many of you did. And, it was a different experience, but I think by and large, I mean, last year when we did this session about looking ahead to virtual evaluations, most of us hadn't done it very much. And I don't know, I was really pleased with how it went. I think it worked well. And I was very pleased. So, and how many kids do I do every year? I don't even know. I don't count them up anymore. I used to do like 150 kids in a year, and I do a lot less than that. I'm probably about maybe 80 kids for evaluations, maybe less. I'm not sure. But every year I have a new family too, so it's always fun. Um, Claire, how about you go next? Claire Osborne?
Sure. Hi. I have been evaluating for, I think, 7 years now. I do about 40 families in the past. This year might be a little busier. I've had several people this year already that are RVing full time. And they're like, well, we can fly home. I'm like, no, you don't need to fly home. We can find another way to do it. And I think it'll be fine. I think it's much easier if you have a relationship with them already and do it online. I think it's harder to get to know the kids and to evaluate when you haven't met them before, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Last year I did actually meet with the only ones I met with, I think, were to sign diplomas. But I did meet with those ones. We went to a park and it was fine. So.
Right. And how about Linda Blocker? Why don't you introduce yourself and evaluations? You're a long-termie.
Yeah, I'm a long time. I was just trying to think, how many years has it been? Yeah. So it's been since 91. So this was my 30th year.
Oh, wow.
So, and I do a large variety. I do, well, usually I have about 200 families. I have 227 at this point. I had several families graduated, or moved or whatever. So I lost some, but I've gained 50 more this year.
Wow.
So
you win the prize.
And my husband's like, yeah, I don't see my wife April, May, and June, but no. Yeah, all my kids are graduated now, so this is kind of like my 3 months of hurrah, and then I go back to normal life now. Not really though, because I have people call me all the time and asking questions, so it's kind of ongoing. So.
And did you do mostly virtual evaluations?
Actually, I did about half and half. I had some that I had the porch open, so we did some porch evaluations. I had some families that were comfortable to just do it in person. I only did probably about 40% of my families last year. A lot of them just, I have a lot of elementary and they're like, nah, we don't want to, which is fine. I told them, I said, it's totally fine. So most of mine were probably secondary. I did have a few elementaries that panicked and it was probably September, October, like, can we come and do evaluations? I just feel like I need one. Like, sure,
Good that they realized it was valuable to them.
Even if a lot of them, some of them just said, I want to keep this consistent. And they were just kind of like, I'm like, okay, so we did them.
I had people say that to me too. They just wanted in a year when everything was thrown out of kilter, they wanted to keep what they could keep normal. They wanted to keep normal.
Yeah, keep things normal. So, but yeah.
How about Maria? Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Maria Geffers, and I was an evaluator, which I absolutely loved. And then I stopped a few years ago, and I've decided I missed it. And I stepped out and I joined the PHAA again. And I decided, yes, I love it. And I decided that this is a great session for me to be in, since my skills are a little rusty and I know a lot of people. I know faces here. So, I'm here to absorb and to relearn and reshine what I know already. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. Well, glad to have you back. And yeah, doing evaluations is a special thing. It's a special relationship with families. And I'm glad that you missed it. I think I would miss it too. Patty, I'm just going on my screen in order here. Patty, why don't you introduce yourself as an
Hi, I'm
evaluator?
Patty Stout, and God has put me in this amazing role and grown it and grown it and grown it. And I started in probably 95 or 96, I think the end of the 95, 96 year. I was going to start the next year because that was my first year needing an evaluator. So I thought I'll get my 1 year under the belt, but then some families, missionary families, had their evaluator, couldn't do it. So it was baptism by fire, but it was good. And now I usually do about 350 a year. I'll probably do close to 400 this year. And I've turned away more than I've accepted. So what I've been doing on the side is running a Facebook page for evaluators, like kind of like this, where we can get together, the teacher's lounge kind of thing, without the nasty teacher's lounge stuff. And I've started an online Facebook directory for evaluators. I also tell people, check out PHAA, check out CHAP. So just to kind of put resources in people's hands.
Great.
And yeah, so
Is that an
I don't know.
open Facebook group, or do people have to, like, members only?
The becoming a PA homeschool evaluator is members only, and you have to answer the questions. So you can ask to join, answer the questions. Do you know how many people I decline? I'm like, if you're an evaluator, you have to pay attention to detail of the law. So you need to pay attention to detail of questions. But that's a really good group. We have new ones and veteran ones there. And it's just, I learn a lot from other people. And
It's wonderful. I'm so thankful you do it.
thank you. Thank you. That's fun.
I wonder.
So, and I love training and mentoring other evaluators. I've probably recruited about 10 more this year and tried to personally mentor them because we can't handle all, especially with the COVID stuff. And some of us are getting older and would like to fade back a little bit. This past month, my business grew outside of Pennsylvania. I did testing with a former PA homeschool family while I was on vacation in Tennessee. And I just did testing in North Carolina and Virginia too. So it's fun to learn about other laws. And it's just kind of, my son lives down there. And so he has a network of friends that are homeschooling. And they're like, my mom, okay. So we just got back. So I love this. I love what we do. I love doing the evaluations and meeting the amazing families and learning from them. Done.
Do you think, Patty, you could put a link to that Facebook group in the chat?
I can put the title of it. I don't want to go digging around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you. And Bonnie, how about you introduce yourself next?
I'm Bonnie Gonzales, and I have been doing evaluations. Gosh, I don't even know. Sometime early in 2000, I started. I can't remember when my kids were still being evaluated. And I have probably about 60 people, although this year I've gotten a slew of new emails in from people who have been referred from this person and this person and this person. So I've gotten a whole bunch of new people, and I keep saying yes, yes, yes. So I have no idea how many I'm going to have at this point. It's a little scary. But yeah, I love it. It keeps me busy. Right after I finish up my AP class, I start doing evaluations, and and it keeps me busy all the way through May and June, and of course during the year too. I don't know who else said that. I think Linda did, questions all along the year, that I get from people, and I enjoy that. I enjoy, helping people along, saying, okay, this is what you have to do to get ready. And so, or answering questions about curriculum. So that's a lot of fun. And I really love seeing the families. I really do. And I love watching the kids grow up. And there's there's one kid that I've had for several years. And I watched him graduate last year. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Could you come back and just do an evaluation again this year just to see me? I mean, they've got a large family, so I get to see him, but it's just so nice. I really do. I love the kids, and I hate watching them graduate sometime. It's happy and sad.
But now we're catching second generation around, right?
I know. Sometimes you feel like these are like part of your kids too, like you've helped them along the way. And I really enjoy that. That's wonderful. So yeah. Yep. All right.
I must have about at least a half dozen families that are second generation homeschoolers now that I evaluated the parents, and now I'm evaluating their kids, and they're some of the best, you know, they're
I
really
love saying, boy, do I have stories to tell you about your dad.
great. And how about Debbie? Can you introduce yourself? It's an
Yes.
about.
Okay, my name is Debbie Butchart. I live up in Oil City, Pennsylvania. And I've been a homeschool evaluator since 2018. I retired from the intermediate unit as a teacher of the hearing impaired and itinerant. And so this is my retirement job. And I give my credit all to Patty, because she was the one that has mentored me with this. I have now about 25 families, anywhere from 2 to 4 children in, you know, that set of groups. And so it's growing. It's growing. And as far as my evaluations, I did all my evaluations last year, even though we didn't have to. But my family said, hey, we put all this work in, we want credit where credit is due. So I definitely did evaluate them, and some of them we did on Zoom. I did one out in my picnic table and my deck. That was really early in the pandemic. So yeah, but everybody else was pretty much, you know, either by Facebook, chatting. And yeah, it all worked out pretty well.
Yeah, great. And we have someone who's just listed here as Conrad. Are you an evaluator? Do you want to introduce yourself? Unmute yourself. You may be a parent and just want to listen. Okay, we'll let them go. So I'd like to open up with what about, since many of us did have experience last year with doing virtual evaluations, how did people present their virtual portfolio, or what did you do? And how did that work? I know for myself, I'm definitely having a fair number of families who are planning, you know, the plan is that we're going to be meeting in person this year. I'm going to have my second vaccine by the end of this month. And, you know, I feel perfectly comfortable meeting with people. And I actually did last year, starting in mid-June, I started seeing people here at my farm, up in our barn. We have an event barn, not an animal barn anymore. And I have a lot of tables and chairs out there. It's nice, and nice cross ventilation. You know, I could feel very safe, and we didn't hug each other. You know, we stayed a little bit apart, but we felt very comfortable. And but many of my families who are planning on meeting with me in person this year asked, can I still maybe do a virtual portfolio? Because it was both a little bit easier than, you know, I say we may stock in sheep protectors may go way down if homeschoolers stop doing, you know, big notebook portfolios with sheep protectors. But, you know, many families found it was an easy way, and possibly they even could share it with other people like grandparents or something, to say, hey, you want to see what the kid did this year? They could share it virtually with anybody. So I thought that was an interesting thing. But what I did with most families was I asked them, for many, I set up a Google Doc location, right? You know, upload your things here. And I would say for about half of my families that worked perfectly. They understood how to do this. They uploaded it here. So I had it all in one place, one, you know, Google Doc folder. And about half of my families, somehow my link didn't work for them. I don't know why, but they made their own. They made their own. I had one family that did it somehow, I have no idea how, but they did it on Facebook. Through something on Facebook, they made this Facebook page, and we had the worst time trying to get to it. It was like, you know, I had to, because it was private, it wasn't public, and it was like I couldn't get in, and we went around and around. But finally I got in, and they really did a beautiful job. And you know, people were able to include lots of photos, videos, all sorts of things in the virtual portfolios. It really worked nicely. And I did find something I hope you all can address. I did find that I thought in advance that, oh, this will be faster this year to do evaluations because I'll be getting these things
No.
first and I'll look over them, albeit sometimes a little bit quickly, but I'll look over them in advance. And then I meet with the family and basically, wow, I loved what you shared. It was great. Okay, goodbye. No. It wasn't like that. I see some of you shaking your head. Yes. It just gave us more time to talk, which is something most of us like to do. And most of the families like to talk and share and discuss things. And it worked well. But it wasn't exactly quicker because of, if someone comes and you're now seeing the kids' big, 2,500 word paper in the evaluation meeting, you've got to take, 5-10 minutes to read it or read part of it while they're sitting there with you. But obviously you're not going to do that. Like on Zoom, it's like, okay, honey, let me take 10 minutes now to read your paper or read what your mom summarized.
I've done this for years. Sorry to interrupt, but if they submit their paper to me like a couple days before, a week before, whatever, I give them a $5 discount. And if it's not on time, the child has to pay me the $5, not the parent. The parents love that.
Yeah.
And that way I said, I don't have to grade it or anything, but I do want to comment because you put so much work into it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sit there and read it while they're there because I'm neurologically too distracted. So yeah, but they get a discount. They also get a discount, $10 discount for having my credit sheet ready. It's based on the one that's in the file manual, but I put more detail into it. So they can list their classics and list their topics of compositions and everything. So if they have that filled out for me, then that's a $10 discount. So.
Yay. That's an interesting thing. Do you have people who are going to be continuing with virtual portfolios this year? You think people like that?
Yeah, I found last year it was cumbersome because I was figuring out, set up the Google Drive folder, send them the link, set up a Zoom link, send them the link. Now I just put it all in a Google Calendar and just send them an invitation to the calendar and all the links are in there. And then they upload if they want a different place, like if they want to do OneDrive or if they want to do a Facebook page, whatever, I'll let them take the initiative with that. And if they would prefer to have FaceTime or Google Meets or something, I'll let me know. But my standard now is just go ahead and set it up. And then I look over it beforehand so I can comment on it. But it certainly is not quicker. And then I do the reports and then I email them to them. I could put them in the folder, but I'm afraid they won't find them. So I email them to them.
Patty, that's interesting. What did you say you did? You put it all in a Google Calendar and then you send them those files right through Google Calendar. That's
the
really,
links
yeah.
on the Google Calendar. And if it's a person, if it's a face-to-face, I'll put my address in there because I get tired of posting my address. So I'm using my Google Calendar for everything. Not everybody can access it, but almost everybody can.
That's a great
and then
idea.
They accept the invitation and then they have their Zoom link, their Google Drive link, and the time of the meeting. So.
And I've found I've been putting all of my evaluation meetings on Google Calendar already. So that would be a natural to do. I thought of that. Use these systems that do have these ways to integrate things. But it's certainly, when you
I make all of my eval stuff one color because you can change the color of the appointment. So everything is my business is red. And that helps my husband because we share a calendar to know when he can schedule things with me and when he can't.
Check my calendar, honey.
It's wonderful.
When you have it on Google Calendar or some sort of digital calendar, it's so much easier when you have those inevitable, like, oh, I can't come that day. But can we switch my meeting time? It's like, yes, and a lot less erasing and crossing out. So that's,
and the other thing is, I tell people, let me know if you have any kind of symptoms, a few days before, and we can just switch to an online, and that's okay. I just had a family call that it was supposed to come for testing tomorrow, and they have cold symptoms, but we're still visiting my 85-year-old mother-in-law who was recently widowed every week. So even a cold symptom we don't want to take. So I just said, okay, we'll switch it to the Google Calendar, just put it into next week, and but I can also say, well, if you're having symptoms, why don't we quickly switch over to an online evaluation. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I did most of my evaluations last year online. There were a few towards the June that I did, a few that were live. And again, they were, mostly in venues that we could, kind of, there was some sort of ventilation. I don't know what I want to do this year. I've had a lot of families asking to continue the online evaluations because I think it's more convenient, especially with people that are traveling, a distance. I've got some people that, are about an hour and a half away. And so it's going to make things a little bit easier. And having them send the information to me in a folder was so much easier. So I'm not going to tell people no as far as doing a Zoom. I just feel like it's probably a beneficial thing to do. But I really like that idea of doing the having everything in one link. That's a great idea. Yeah.
The other thing was last year we were blessed with a new grandchild down in North Carolina, and we went down there for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to keep doing evals from down there. So it was convenient for me as well. I lightened my schedule because I needed grandchildren time, but I was able to still graduate people, and it made sure I wasn't so overwhelmed for the other weeks I was in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah.
Debbie, what did you, or Linda, you have something to say?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I had one family who, they implied that they were doing in person, and she had called about 5 minutes to when the evaluation should have been, and she goes, "Are you sending me a link?" And I was like, "I thought you were coming." And she's, "Oh, no, I thought we were doing Zoom." I'm like, "Then why wouldn't I send you a link prior?" Thinking the logic of this. So with her, we ended up literally doing the picture portfolio. I have an evaluation worksheet that all my families have to fill in, which is summary sheets. So she had that. So she quickly, emailed that to me. So I had that. And then, with that, she literally was like, "Oh, now here's, a couple of things." She just quickly emailed me during the evaluation, but that was the unique one for the year. But I've had some families that tried to do the virtual uploading, and they just like, "Is there any other way?" And I had a box on my porch. So I'd say, "Drop it off, just let me know." And then I'd bring the portfolio in, look at it ahead of time. And then when it was done, I'd put the evaluation in the portfolio, stick it out in the box and say, "Okay, it's out. You can pick it up anytime," and that's how we got around them not doing virtual.
Yeah, I had one family that did that. One family that they just, the mom just isn't very high tech, and she thought one of her kids could help her. I mean, it was enough that they all got on Zoom. But they did that. She dropped off on the front porch the portfolios and then came over a week and a half later to pick them up, and that worked out fine.
Yeah, that worked.
By
I was
Zoom.
concerned last year because that's still handling something physical. And I have a chronic lung condition, and I'm thinking, do I even want to be flipping through pages that they've been sneezed on and dripped on and snarfed on? And, I'm thinking, do I want to have a hazmat costume and rubber gloves to look at portfolios? And I was a little more cautious about that kind of thing. Not paranoid, but cautious.
Well, and
So for that reason, and most of them have seen me near death with coughing and breaking ribs, so they understand.
Yeah.
When I met in person, we stayed 6 feet apart, and I had my diffuser on with oils that were immune boosting and germ killing. So, and I tried to keep windows open when I could. So we have mitigation every time a new family comes through the door. I have a fresh towel in my bathroom, so I'm just really careful. I wipe down with Norwex, and then I hang another towel up, and I'm just really careful. But I've been having testing students here regularly this year. I had a few face-to-face last year, mostly for graduations, but it was almost all virtual last year.
I'm kind of curious, what is everybody doing this year with the kids you didn't evaluate last year? Are you doubling up? Are you doing singular evaluations and just looking at what they accomplished? So if you didn't see a kid last year, because I have a lot of elementary kids that I did not see last year. So what are you doing in terms of that?
Well, I don't want to jump in, but I'm jumping in. By law, the only ones that really need to be backtracked are our high school ones tracking credits.
Right.
You know, so the elementary ones, the governor waived it. We don't have anything to do by law with last year. If mom wants to ask questions, but to me, I'm doing this year. If they want me to go over last year's stuff, they're going to pay me double.
That's
and they
what I'm
better
thinking.
extra time.
Mhm, yeah.
So if I have to do, if they want me to do two, that's their choice. I'm not imposing above and beyond the law. They can pay me extra.
That's
And,
what I, yeah,
but they
that was
don't
my
need
thought.
the paperwork,
Mhm,
you know,
right.
and if there's a developmental concern, we can address it from this year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
that
for
was
the
my
high
thought.
school, I gave them the option last year. If they didn't want to do a high school eval last year, they would pay double this year.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that was pretty much what I said too. If you're going to have it, you're going to pay extra for it. But I was curious what everyone else was doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I mentioned it to in my like emails out to families about, and if you didn't have one last year, I mean, again, it was my elementary families that some of them, even some families where I saw the high school kids, but I didn't see the elementary kids. And yeah, I think I'm probably going to ask, or maybe ask parents, if you didn't see me last year, how about a little summary on what was done? Just, one paragraph. And then I'm sure that'll be something we'll talk about. But yeah, I'm not gonna worry about it too much. And again, I think all of my secondary kids, all that I'm continuing to see, all did evaluations.
Yeah, and I did all mine. None of them, refused or didn't want to do it. They're like, like said, they put all this work in for their year and they wanted credit, and it's their documentation, they have it. And if the school district is requesting something and proof, one of my families right off the bat, she said, no, I want you to do it because I'm going to take this right over to them and make sure that they have that in their file. And so, yeah, I didn't have any families that backed out of it at all.
I had one family, very nice family, who they have 5 children that I evaluate, and they were all like 8th grade is the oldest. And so they were not going to do evaluations at all. And then the mom got kind of paranoid, like, what if
Right.
for some reason we get called on this? And we did a virtual evaluation, just sort of like a joint one for all the kids. So it wasn't like I was seeing each kid individually, but it was sort of saw them en masse. And she wrote a summary. She's a family who usually gives me a whole notebook with like 50 pages of writing, single space, that the mom has done. She's incredibly it helps her to talk about what their year has been. And I usually see them in their home. Yeah, I think she felt like they would miss it if we didn't do anything. And we haven't quite decided 100% what we'll do this year. They might want to go virtual again this year. But we'll see. But yeah, so some people last year kind of changed their mind. Can you possibly still see us? Like, yes.
Well, the other category are those who are COVID homeschooling and hoping to re-enroll.
Mhm.
And so I approach them so differently. I encourage them to borrow the materials from the district so that they keep up with and they can re-enroll and re-enter them. Or at least follow the topics covered in science and social studies, even if they want to do their own unit study, but at least they're getting the content, the topics, so, but then they want to re-enroll. And if they're going to go in the middle of the year, well, they don't need to have an evaluation, but some districts are requiring that just so they have the documentation for the time homeschooled so they can give them their 180 days for this year. So there's a lot of questions on COVID homeschoolers. Go ahead. What?
I know I've had, I don't think this past year, but I've had experiences in the past where someone homeschooled for just part of the year. And, like maybe one time a family in my local district homeschooled for 1 month. And then they put their kid back in school. It didn't work out so well. And the district contacted me and said, we need an evaluation on this family, because otherwise they're going to consider the family truant for that time. And I think they're right. I think that would be held up, I think, if it went to, you know, official legal stuff. I think the district would be well within their bounds to say this family was truant for, you know, 30 days and they didn't hold up their end of the bargain. So, you know, I've done evaluations for short period of times because it was required by the district. But yeah. Did any of you find that some kids either communicated a bit better in the virtual situation or communicated a little bit less comfortably?
No, I had more of the mom talking or the grandmom talking
Yeah.
than I had the kids, even though they were sitting right next to them in the chair or whatnot. And then I tried to address to that, you know, student, you know, and, you know, bring up his name and say, well, you tell me a little bit about how you're, you know, you're doing and how what you liked and so on. And so that kind of, you know, helped a little bit, but it was mostly the mom or grandma that was giving me.
Sometimes that's nerves. Mom's
Yeah, I
insecure, so she wants to talk. So I've been bold already and said, excuse me, I love hearing from you, but the law says I have to interview the child. So he needs to have a little chance to talk. So can I have a chance to do that so I can sign off on the paperwork?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And,
Yeah, I think some of my kids definitely were more open to talking. And they were like, oh, hang on, let me go get this. And they'd run up and bring something else back and then run to the, you know, so I got to see more interaction with the kids, but, you know, through the virtual than I would if they were here.
you know, something you mentioned there about the fact that the kids were at their own home, they could run and get something and hold it up and show. And that was nice. I enjoyed that too. And I did that especially with my kids, my elementary kids. It's like, you know, well, you don't have to have everything in a photograph or something that you've submitted by Zoom. You can, you know, hold something up and show me. And I had kids who did that, and it was kind of like show and tell.
Especially with the change in compulsory attendance age going down to 6. I like to see the little kids' pictures or do what they did. Who cares about portfolios and textbooks for that little?
Yeah. And this year, probably a lot of us who do elementary as well as secondary will be seeing a lot more younger kids.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and I like to say, Mom, this is one of my big interview questions, and I do address the mom. Where did you see his greatest progress this year so I can demonstrated progress? You know, I get it right from the horse's mouth. But I also like to say what was the biggest frustration. So
Yeah.
And sometimes for that, if it's the biggest frustration, I might say, okay, you know, honey, you've been here for a long time to the kid, and now you can go out and play, and I'll just talk to your mom a few more minutes on Zoom. And, you know,
dismiss the child. If mama says it's okay.
You know, in front, you know, you hate to see the kid kind of wilt when the parents discussing all their negative habits or, you know, their shortcomings. And, you know,
I always ask the child, what was your best part of the year? What was your most frustrating part of the year? And you may not name anyone in your family. And that makes them laugh.
That's good. That's good.
I think the one thing that's cool about this year with some of my families, at least 3 of them, I'm connected with them with Facebook. And so they will put up a scenario of their whole week and pictures of, you know, each of their kid and what they did, you know, whether it was their art project or their reading project, or they're going through the 19th century, you know, with history, and each year they've been doing a week for each year as the 1900s and so on. And they're sharing through that. So a lot of it, you know, I've been transferring that information over to their evaluation sheet. So when it comes to them to do their evaluation, it'll be a little easier on me because I've already written it down because it's phenomenal. I mean, what they're doing, and then they're first time homeschoolers. So I don't know if they're going to, you know, follow through with going on with this, with homeschooling themselves, but they're having a great time. They're having a wonderful time with it.
that will be an interesting thing to see. Do these COVID families who came to homeschooling because they weren't pleased with what was going on in the public?
That's where I
Mhm.
got most of my newer ones from.
Yeah.
It's all these, they didn't want to go to the school district and they didn't want to put up with, these hybrid learning and the online learning. And then several of my kids are autistic spectrum too, and they just couldn't handle that. And it was just too much for them. So, yeah.
I think there are going to be a lot of families that are going to continue that, this was the trial run. And I
Yeah.
think, again, with support from their evaluator to realize like, yeah, you really did it. It was great. They'll probably feel encouraged, to continue.
When I did my dissertation research, I interviewed 30 families in Pennsylvania homeschooling children with special needs. And in my research, I found that a taxonomy, how do you classify homeschoolers? The only thing we have in common is we educate at home. We have different, curriculums, different faith walks, different, all that stuff, approaches. But I found two categories. One is called negative exit. They pulled their kids out of school because of negative experience, or positive entry. They were embracing the ideology of homeschooling. And now it's almost like we could add a third, negative because of the COVID stuff, but not because they hated public school, you know what I mean, or private school. And so, but it's interesting. Then my other question was, why are you continuing to homeschool? And we're going to see some of those families who said we just fell in love with it. And others are like, I can't wait to send them back. So it's interesting to see, but I found that those that had the negative entry and exit then began to embrace the beauty of homeschooling. And so that was their reason for continuing to homeschool.
I have a question. Does anyone here, when you're doing your evaluations, do you record on Zoom so that you can go back, or do you do like in person, you just do it as you're talking with the student and the parent?
No, I don't
Good
record.
question.
I've never recorded. I mean, that's an interesting thought to be able to do that, to go back afterwards, but I've never recorded. I usually just kind of copiously sit and take notes well, like I do when I'm talking to them in person. But that's a good thought. I think the one good thing about doing something like Zoom is that you can kind of slow things down a little bit more. There's not so much that for me, I think I can kind of pause things a little bit easier on Zoom for parents, to give me the opportunity to write things down. I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to try, to kind of videotape. I don't have the time to kind of, if I wanted to do it twice, that would be nice. I wish I had that much time, but I don't seem to have that much time to be able to go through it. So I try to catch the highlights of everything that are going on. That's kind of my way of doing it. Yeah.
I found too, having the virtual portfolio.
Yeah.
I had all this stuff. So I did find that going back and writing things up, I certainly went back to both. I have my parents or the kids write up a summary of each area, and many parents do a wonderful job of that. And I now had that digitally, which was really handy. I mean, I think.
And you can copy and paste.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
The parent said, couldn't say it better than the parent.
Mhm.
And, so yeah, I'll just quote from the parent. Why not? And that worked out well. It made it easier for me as an evaluator to write things up, and it's it worked out nicely. But I did find it was really helpful to have their stuff there that I could go back and look. What was the name of that research paper they did? And I had the research paper. It was digital. So that was very handy and made it easier to write things up. A lot of juggling screens, but it made it easier.
Yeah, Maria, I don't know that I'd have time to go back again, but I think on the days that I have boom, 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 boom evals, maybe having the recording would be a nice safety valve, but I would definitely delete it right away. Just for confidentiality's sake and all that stuff. But it might be, especially getting back into it and having a little bit lower clientele. That might be really an excellent tool to get you up and running again.
Thank you.
Yeah. We had a question here from the woman that joined, Serena Conrad, she asked about, she had asked about if there were things that we would prefer as evaluators that we do differently for a virtual evaluation this year. So I told her that, maybe
my
some of
family. That's
Yeah.
my family. That was my family that did the marvelous Facebook.
there you go.
I had trouble getting in, but we finally worked it out.
Well, I was thinking, okay, great. I don't know if there were things that were helpful for her, but maybe all of us could kind of share some things. I thought that would be helpful. All of us could kind of share some things that for virtual evaluations that make it easier for us. I don't know. I think we have kind of, but that might be a good thing for her.
Serena, what you did last year was fabulous. And as long as I can get into it, you can do it just the same way.
Well, there you go. That solved that problem right there.
And she always writes up wonderful summaries and really thoughtful. And she always has a lot of great photographs of things that they've done. And she had a great photo show of their year. And it was really heartwarming. It was really lovely. It was a great, if you do that again, it would be great. And
she says, thank you.
There you go. Good.
don't change anything, Serena. It was.
I didn't want to miss the question, so I figured I was.
I'm glad. Sometimes when I just see someone's last name, I'm just like, well, there are Conrads. It might not be my Conrad. But
I love that. My Conrads. I get that too. They're mine. I love these families. And I say, I've got the cream of the crop, and it's such an honor and a privilege to be their evaluator.
Yeah.
Is
It
it?
is.
We have that question of suggestions or tips, so I don't want to detract from that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm going to bow out shortly because I have to get ready for my 1 o'clock session.
Debbie, did you have something to say?
Nope.
No. Linda, did you have something you wanted to share?
No, I'm good. I forgot what it was, but I think I remember. It's okay.
What's your train of thought?
If I had to share one tip, it would be right away, as soon as I schedule it, set up all the links, because I found myself later just spinning in the midst of the business. Did I ever do that? So that's one thing I'm doing this year. And I'm having more families available in April, which is helpful because it'll thin it out a little bit later on.
Yeah, I think I kind of went through, I do the color coding, whether they're in person, whether I travel, whether it's a Zoom. So I put it as a purple that I know, and then I put the Zoom link right in the Google, so then I can see, okay, they're purple, but they don't have this link. Okay, I need to, and then I'll kind of do it. And because I was afraid I'd have too many files, Google files, that I may not have enough room for everybody. So that's why I figured I'd do kind of a month or month and a half at a time,
I did find this year, even though during this past year, I did pay whatever minimal amount you have to pay to get some more Google space because I had overrun my quota. And then I just 2 weeks ago, I was overdrawn again, and I had too much. So I had to get some more.
Did you go back and delete all of last year's then?
Yeah, so I'm going to go through and delete a lot of last year's portfolios because I know a lot of those are visual documents, 50 photos of wonderful artwork, or things like that. And it's like, okay.
I even tell my families that, I'll email them and say, here's your evaluation. If you want your folder, make sure you save it, because I will be deleting it on my end. I usually say like 2 weeks after.
The other thing I found helpful this year that I did not do last year, and this is to address Serena's question, within my Google Drive, I am starting the file name with 2021.05.06 Williams or, Richmond or whatever. And that way they're appearing in order and I don't have to go looking for them. So they're by date and I can see whose evaluations are next and I can peruse those folders. And then I can go through and delete the earlier ones. And boy, is just a simple thing like a file name super helpful.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Patty. Yeah.
Anything that can save us time. And
Yes. Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
us learn.
And also save the confusion of having all of these. Have I read those? Oh my goodness. Did I read this? Didn't I read this? I know I saw the kid, but did I, or I'm going to see the kid. Did I really look at this? And trying to remember which, who's where. I have long lists for myself, and it sometimes it gets really confusing. So yeah.
Well, and using file name, you can even change the file name
Yeah.
and add an X at the end to
Mhm.
show you that you
Right.
did it.
Yeah.
Something simple like that
Yeah.
can really help us when we're in the midst of the whole busyness of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know sometimes just learning to use the digital tools that are out there, like this year, it's not related to evaluations, but I may find some way to do it for something related to evaluations. This year for my AP class, I used an application form that was a Google form. Whereas before I'd always had, print out this Word form, fill it out by hand and mail it into me.
Scan it or mail it.
And
Yeah.
I finally, realized like just edit it and email it back to me or whatever, but this year, this Google form, it like, oh my gosh, it collects everyone, all their emails. It gives me a spreadsheet. It does all this stuff for me. I love it. And they could attach things and it was just great. So there may be some ways that I could use that too, even to, I don't know, to check off when I've done families. But yeah, I think all of us every year, we're not going to learn all the tools that might help us, but we can learn a couple every year that can help us out a little bit.
I have started using Google Forms. I just have to remember to do it. You get bombarded with so many new families,
Mhm.
but to list the names and ages of the children and grade levels if they want to share with me, and birth dates for my testing because I need that, and their mailing address and their phone number and what questions are they looking for and stuff. And then what I do is it saves it in Google Forms, but I print them to a PDF and save them in the families folder, and then I delete them off Google Forms so I know I have processed them and make sure I add their information into my database that I keep.
Mhm.
So again, it helps, but sometimes it's one more step and it's overwhelming. But that does help me. And then I've learned just to delete it out of Google Forms so I know I'm not looking at 25 new families, but I only have 2 more to process.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'm going to go get ready to teach about research papers.
And I'm going to
Um,
go to,
Well, I think we're done anyway. It is 12:49 from what I have. So we should be done in about 30 seconds. All right, guys. Well, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yeah,
Thank
this was
you.
great. All right. Thank
Keep
you.
up the good work, everybody. I'm
Yeah,
proud
you
of
too.
you.
Have a good season.
well.
Yes. All right.
Bye.
I
Bye-bye.
look forward to seeing you, Claire, for evaluations with your kids. I'm Claire's evaluator.
Let me know when.
Right.